properties. Next slide, please, Mike. And just to sort of, re-emphasize the point, commercial PACE really is a national opportunity, and we have programs established or in development all over the country, especially in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, including a couple of programs that have launched relatively recently and are just doing their first projects in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. It's really quite exciting, and obviously those are both very large markets, and there are a lot of multifamily properties in those states. Next slide, please. So these are the states we're going to cover today. However, if you're administrator for a program and you're not in this region, we'd still love for you to introduce yourself so that we know you're here. This is the part of the program where we'd love it if the administrators who are on, who are participating can introduce themselves. And if you would just say kind of how long your program has been in operation, how many projects you've done, if you're looking at multifamily, have any experience in that sector, we would appreciate it. And we'll start with Connecticut.
Thanks a lot, Colin, and good afternoon, everyone. This is Nick Zuba here with the Connecticut Green Bank. I'm a senior manager of financing programs where, again, my primary responsibility is basically managing the CPACE program, and I've been doing that now for almost 5.5 years. But the CPACE program in Connecticut has been operating since December of 2012, so it's actually, we're just on the cusp of 8 years in operation here in Connecticut. And then we have, in terms of our performance, we've closed on just over 330 projects, and we are nearing our $200 million capital deployed milestone as a program. So we're inching ever closer to that. So, and then basically we are also in the midst of the process right now trying to get HUD programmatic approval. We've actually initiated that process some months ago, and we are still knee deep in that. So definitely look forward to the conversation today, and hopefully to help others do the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. I think we have someone from DC PACE or the DC program on the call.
I think you've got two of us. This is Bracken Hendricks, and I'm on with my colleague Nikki Molina, and we are the program administrators for the Washington DC PACE program. I think we did the first HUD formally approved multifamily LIHTC deal. It was a 9% LIHTC deal that went up through the regional office in Baltimore, but was formally validated by the HUD headquarters back in the Obama administration. We've done another LIHTC 9% project and a number of multifamily properties broadly, and we've looked at various types of Section 202 and other forms of HUD subsidies, different sort of Section 8 and public housing authority properties. So we're really interested in this discussion, and we are thrilled that we just recently got our categorical approval for the DC program after a long period of submission. So thank you to HUD for moving that through the traps. Yeah, so really glad to join this group.
Thank you, Bracken. Thanks for sharing that exciting news. That's awesome. Delaware.
President.
Would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Tony DePrima. I'm with the Executive Director of Energize Delaware, also known as the Delaware Sustainable Energy Utility. We are the statewide administrators for CPACE here in Delaware. Pretty newer of the programs. Legislation was passed in 18. We got our guidelines and everything straightened out in 19 and had our first participating county. So we're a county-based programs. And there's only 3 counties in Delaware, and we have one of them is now a participating county. Second one just approved it this month. Still signing the participation agreements, and then we are talking to the third county about coming on board. So hopefully within the next few months, the whole state will be eligible for CPACE financing. We did our first deals in 2020, early 2020, two commercial office financing projects together, almost $7 million. So again, we are in the early stages, but we're getting more and more interest. And what we've learned is to get your local government officials interested, you need to have real projects that they feel they're assisting with.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. It's exciting. Massachusetts.
Hi, Colin. Hi, everybody. My name is Wendy O'Malley. I am Vice President and I manage the CPACE program efforts here in Massachusetts for mass development. We're a quasi-public state agency. We facilitate economic development throughout the Commonwealth through a number of programs we have both on real estate and finance. So PACE fits in really nicely with our wide array of options that we offer our businesses here in the Commonwealth. And we launched recently. So we launched about 4 months ago. We're active, we're out there, and we're excited to hopefully close our first project in the next upcoming months. We're working our way through our first applications. We have 35 municipalities that have already opted into our program, so we're really excited about that. We've had a lot of inquiries about multifamily housing and how that will benefit the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that's a really big interest point for those municipalities that haven't opted in yet. So I'm excited personally to connect with this crowd and HUD and to learn more so that I can then implement this here in Massachusetts as we make our program more active.
Whoops, I'm on mute. Thank you, Wendy. Maryland.
Hi, thanks, Colin. Hi, Bob. It's good to see your face. We had several phone conversations, so great to put a face with a name. My name's Jessica Coleman. I'm the Senior Manager of Programs at Pace Financial Servicing, and we work with the Maryland Clean Energy Center as the statewide program sponsor to administer the Maryland PACE program. The Maryland PACE program covers 16 of 18 PACE-enabled jurisdictions in Maryland. And just this year, we have actually just surpassed, I think, 40 projects and $30 million of financing for PACE across the state. So I look forward to making that formal announcement at the end of the year, but we are on a roll and looking forward to financing some more multifamily. There's specifically a lot of interest for that in the city of Baltimore, not surprisingly.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jessa. New Jersey.
Hi, it's Victoria Zellin from New Jersey PACE, and we are looking forward to probably sometime in January to have the PACE law passed and signed. Right now it's been passed in the Assembly. We're still waiting for the Governor's Office and the Senate to agree on some final points of contention. The plan is that once it's signed, it will go to the New Jersey EDA, the Economic Development Authority, which is a quasi-governmental authority that deals with most of the economic development programs in New Jersey, quite a competent organization. They're empowered to either run the program themselves or do an RFP, which they will likely do to find an administrator. They have 6 months to do that. We're all hoping that they'll find a way to enable municipalities, of which there are 565 in New Jersey, to pass a common ordinance earlier than the 6 months, but we're all expecting that it will take 6 months to get the ordinance written and the laws, the rules and regulations done. And so hopefully by fall, we'll be able to start operating PACE, but that's in many people's judgment, it's an optimistic projection. We're always optimistic, so that's
You're doing great. You're doing great. It's a lot of work to get these things going.
And I have to really acknowledge the CPACE Alliance for hiring a lobbyist to do the detailed negotiations, which New Jersey PACE as a nonprofit, has never been able to afford. So thank you to the CPACE Alliance.
That sounds great. New York. I don't know. I think NYSEG had a conflict, but do we have anyone from New York's program?
I'm actually for Niceek, Kyle
So,
Manpeister
hi,
here.
Kyle.
Yeah, hi. Sorry to jump ahead, but yeah, I'll go. Kyle Manpeister with the New York City Energy Efficiency Corporation. We're the administrator for the soon-to-be New York City PACE program. New York City passed legislation last year authorizing PACE. Since then, we've been in the rulemaking process, which is coming to a close. Hopefully, we have a proposed rule that was issued last month. The public comment period ended last week. So we hope to have a final rule soon, probably early next year. And then, yeah, hopefully we can have the program up and accepting projects, early next year, first quarter of next year. And so it's a very exciting time for us. And in terms of HUD, we have been in touch with HUD, and we are in that process as well. So we hope to get that going simultaneously or soon thereafter.
That's awesome. Yeah. Kyle, I know you guys are getting you have a lot of incoming. I know there are a lot of very large cities and markets participating today, but there are a lot of buildings in New York City that need a retrofit.
Certainly, and New York City has passed very aggressive legislation to push buildings. So we hope and anticipate that PACE will play a very large role in helping the city achieve the goals that it set out.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Kyle. Pennsylvania, CPACE?
Yeah, hi. So we're working our way through our counties, 67 of them. We have 13 of them have adopted it. And just last week, we launched the Allegheny-Pittsburgh program, which is very exciting because we do have a lot of project interest already out there. So I'm hoping we have a project announcement in the next, I'll say 4 to 8 weeks. That's me being a real optimist probably, but that's what this is all about, right? So I also want to just mention, exactly, like everyone is. I also want to just mention that my previous jobs have included Habitat, and I'm on the board of directors for an affordable housing provider in Center City, Allentown. And so, coming at this from really the multifamily, the subsidized HUD projects and multifamily projects for affordable housing of all types, I mean, there's such a need for updates and resources for so many projects I know about just in my backyard. So this is a really exciting conversation. And hopefully we can get it working nationally, because here in Pennsylvania, of course, we don't allow any apartment buildings, but I'm working on that too. So, well, Lisa's working on that. So I'm gonna pass it to Lisa.
Baby steps.
Hi, I'm Lisa Shulock with the Philadelphia CPACE program and work very closely with Holly. And actually, we're all working on getting multifamily included into the Pennsylvania program. But Philadelphia's program has been up for a year, and we just recently closed our third project. And it was actually a retroactive financing, which for those of you who are on the monthly member calls, I think we're going to be talking about that later this afternoon. And so we've so far financed $8 million worth of projects with those 3 deals, and have a very robust pipeline, as does Holly, for the rest of the state. So we're bullish, but would be more so if we had multifamily allowed. So that's what we're working on in 2021.
Well, Lisa, just a standing offer, if we can assist in any way, please let us know, because it's
okay. We probably will be getting in touch with you.
Okay, that sounds great. And last but not least, our friends in Virginia.
Hi there, everybody. This is Scott Dickey. I work with Sustainable Real Estate Solutions. We're a national CPACE program administrator, and we partnered in Virginia with Arlington County, which was the first jurisdiction in the Commonwealth to start up a program here. This was back in the circa 2017 timeframe. And since then, the Virginia market has slowly evolved. And Arlington in the Commonwealth is a relatively small market in Virginia, which is an otherwise vast state. So I'm curious to see how things will evolve, and over time, I've been collaborating with our colleagues here in Virginia Pace Authority, the State Energy Office with Dan Farrell. I'm not sure if he's on the call, but we had some discussions early in the program's launch about potential pairing of PACE with multifamily deals. There was a lot of uncertainty at that time and concern over how VHDA, the Virginia Housing Development Authority, would view PACE in the capital stack on projects. And because of I think several factors, but the big one being for Arlington's relatively small market size and the prevailing uncertainty, there was very little interest at the time. But I have a lot of hope for Virginia long term. I think this is a great push. So thanks to Colin and everybody else who's been leading this. And look forward to seeing how things evolve. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to Abby, who may have some more commentary on other Virginia markets. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
Great, thanks, Scott. So yeah, I'm Abby Johnson with the Virginia Pace Authority. We currently administer 5 programs in the state, including Loudoun County and Fairfax County, to the west of Arlington, as well as some cities down the 95 corridor, and one coming up in the western part of the state. Basically, Virginia, we're close to closing our first deal, knock on wood. Like everyone else, we're optimistic. I think Virginia's unique in that I think we really need that first project. And then I think there's a lot of latent demand that is going to be forthcoming. And in particular, multifamily, we've had a number of requests, both in Loudoun and Fairfax, other parts of the state, for multifamily properties that would have an affordable component or an FHA component. So definitely we're very excited about some developments we can have with HUD here regionally to open that market up. It's certainly one of the strongest markets right now in general in commercial real estate, given what's going on. And then to follow up what Scott was saying regarding VHDA, it's this newly branded Virginia Housing, in case you start seeing that around, it's the same organization. I'm actually on their board now, and so I'm trying to navigate how to use that influence appropriately to try to move the kind of the ball forward on that. So I'll be probably reaching out to our HUD friends, as well as my colleagues in Virginia and in the area to basically try to get that going. I think there might be more openness now, particularly because in Virginia, we have more stringent requirements for energy. We're part of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. And so there's really a lot more momentum around that, as well as the fact that we do have resiliency and stormwater in Virginia. And that's also a focus of our, as part of RGGI and as part of affordable housing to address that. So hopefully all these things will push Virginia housing or suggest the value of including CPACE in the capital stack. But happy to be here and answer any questions and continue the conversation.
Thanks, Abby. Is there anyone on from any other programs that weren't called that would like to introduce themselves? All right, well, let's keep on keeping on. I'm going to turn things over to Bob.
Thanks, Colin, and nice to meet everyone virtually. As Colin said at the outset, we do look at this as a workshop or even a conversation. So I'm going to go through some basics of FHA programs and HUD multifamily programs on this slide, then go through some of the basics of our guidance, the Housing Notice 2017-1, and then just some tips for practitioners. But again, if you have questions at any time, feel free to either chime in, put it in the chat. Colin, I think we worked it out. They came in all ways last time, and we managed, I think we got to most of them. But again, if questions survive after the end of this session, we did some through email after the last workshop, and we'll make sure that if anybody has any questions, we'll get to you. And I heard a couple folks say that they're interested in interacting with HUD folks, so we're happy to set something up separately with any particular PACE jurisdiction that wants to talk about HUD programs or how to get HUD active in or get active in HUD properties in their jurisdiction. So with that, let me jump in. We thought it would be good to give you an overview of HUD programs. The particular HUD multifamily programs that are covered by the HUD multifamily guidance are set out in the first, I think, second or third pages of the notice. And at HUD, we use a lot of numbers that you may not be familiar with. Essentially, those are all sections of the National Housing Act. So one of the things that we provide is FHA mortgage insurance, which means simply that we insure the private lender against default. And so you'll hear numbers like 223F, 221D4, 221D3. Those are all, again, just sections of the National Housing Act, and those are applicable to PACE, or PACE can be used in those programs. And again, that just means that HUD has a role in the property because we insure the lender against default. The key point in that is the lender's not going to do anything without HUD approval, rightfully so, because if anything happens to the loan and it goes in default, we pay the lender off. They get basically all their money out of the loan, and then HUD steps into the shoes of the lender. So again, FHA mortgage insurance absolutely can work with PACE, and we're going to talk in more detail over the next couple of slides about that. I heard, I think it was Bracken and some other folks on the call talk about pairing PACE with Section 202, affordable housing for the elderly. And that is just that. It's senior housing, but all the residents are low income. In all cases, the provider is a not-for-profit because that's a requirement of the HUD program. And in some cases, there's a mortgage on the property that is held by HUD. HUD holds that mortgage. And in most cases, we stopped giving mortgages in about 1988, 1987, 88, and we gave grants. Still the 202 program, but we granted the construction funds to the nonprofit entity to build the property. And we currently in all cases provide, almost all cases provide a rental subsidy to those properties. So it's got a mortgage that HUD holds or a grant, but in all cases subsidy. So we're interested in the cash flow. And I think as several people talked about on this call, there's certainly a need for improved cash flow on housing, affordable housing. Section 811 is very similar to 202 housing for the elderly, but that's housing for the disabled. Again, nonprofit owner or sponsor. In almost all cases, these are grants. There's some very early ones where HUD holds a loan, but for the most part, these are grants from HUD to that nonprofit, and HUD does provide a rental subsidy. Interestingly, on 811, we have many, many group homes in those. So we have a lot of single family homes that have been broken down to 4 or more units. And we have many properties that are 10 or 20 units. So they're relatively small, less bang for the buck there, if you will, but still a need. So in the 811 sphere, you will find those smaller properties. And again, typically group homes. 202s are generally larger, anywhere from 40 to 50 units to up to 200 units, and mortgage insurance that covers the gamut, but our average property is in the 150 to 200 unit range. Section 8 project-based rental assistance, heard a couple people talk about that as well. So in HUD multifamily world, we deal with, as we call it, project-based subsidy. That means the Section 8 contract, which is just tenant assistance, is tied to the individual building. And again, PACE is important in that sphere because HUD is essentially paying for the bulk of the rent and operating expenses at the property. I don't have to tell you all that energy and utilities are a large portion of any property's operating expenses. And so Section 8 across the country pays a huge amount towards utilities. Section 8 project-based rental assistance can be paired with an FHA insured property and a 202. And Section 8 can also stand alone. So we have properties that have Section 8, and that's our only involvement on the property. So there may be a mortgage, but HUD is not involved in that mortgage, or there may not be a mortgage. Most multifamily properties have some type of financing. But again, I'll differentiate the Section 8 that I'm talking about with what we call tenant-based Section 8. So those are the portable vouchers that are administered by the locality and that the resident carries to the individual property for just their unit. And then if the resident leaves, they take that subsidy with them. Section 8 project-based rental assistance stays with the property. So if the resident leaves, they leave that subsidy behind. Developers love project-based rental assistance because it's a one payment from HUD on a monthly basis for the entire subsidy contract, which could cover the entire property. Financiers love Section 8 project-based rental assistance for the same reasons. It's a guaranteed payment from the federal government for the entire property. And you know, the investors on the property and investors in the financing love it as well. I mentioned HUD held mortgages. We do have mortgages where we hold the mortgage, a few in the 202 realm. We don't get many. Loans go into default. And as I mentioned, under the contractor mortgage insurance, we pay off the lender and then we step into the shoes of the lender and we hold those mortgages. HUD's not in the business of holding mortgages, so we don't have a lot of those. Generally, when we do get mortgages or notes into our inventory, we sell them or we foreclose. But they are out there, and so in many instances, or in some instances, HUD holds a mortgage. And frankly, for the process I'm going to describe in PACE approval, it's actually quicker and easier because there's no lender involved. HUD's the lender. So if you're working with us for HUD approval, you already are working with the lender. Next slide, please. And again, chime in with any questions if you have any. So I mentioned it earlier, our multifamily guidance and our only guidance is in Housing Notice 2017-01. I think, Colin, we're going to send around the slides after this presentation. So a link is, Colin saying yes, the link is in the slides. But if anybody's having trouble finding it, we certainly can send you a link to our guidance. It sounds like a lot of folks on this phone call or on this webinar are familiar with it, but we can get that to you. We have found since we issued that in 2017, we haven't done as many deals as we would like. And we've done 4, and we're going to talk a little bit about the particulars of those deals, again, to give you some practice pointers. But frankly, we'd like to do more. So we look at these workshops as an opportunity to get the word out and to help people understand the HUD process. We are the federal government, so there's a lot of brain damage associated with working through our processes, but obviously people have done it. And as we're going to talk about in a little bit, if you've heard, some localities have gotten the HUD approval. So it can be done, it does work. And I will say, because we want to do deals where there is a possibility of waiving requirements in the notice, we're open to that as well. There's some requirements, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that can't be waived because they're based on statute or our lawyers put those in there and we just can't get around them. There's other things that we can waive and we're willing to waive that. Colin put up the link right there. So, again, if you or working with a property owner or a lender come across something in our notice that you say, look, this just doesn't work for us or for me, go ahead and reach out to us and let's talk about it. We might be able to work it out. I will say in putting together the notice back in, came out in January 2017, so this was back in 2016, 4, almost 5 years ago now. We worked with 3 disparate localities and had them look at it. The individuals aren't on this call, but some of the localities we work with are on this call and or on this workshop. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to put something out that was dead in the water. So working with the localities, we got something we thought was workable. Again, it's been workable. Deals have gotten done, but again, we'd like to do more. So the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about what are the HUD requirements, who do I contact, and again, some tips. So the notice starts with the PACE requirements. And the first thing is that we want to see something from the locality as to how the PACE financing is treated. So right here in the slide, you can see we want a letter from the locality. That's you folks on the call. That the PACE financing is treated like taxes, collected with taxes. Only the most recent assessment is due at any given time, so that if there's a delinquency, the total amount is not due, and that there is lender notice required. And by that we mean the the HUD FHA insured lender, either if HUD is the first lien holder or the FHA insured lender, not necessarily the PACE financer. We've been able to work with localities on all of these. The one that we've struggled a little bit with is lender notice. Some localities don't have it in their legislation or don't have it in their requirements to notify the lender. But we've been able to do a workaround, which is essentially that the borrower would post with the FHA lender basically 1 year's worth of PACE payments. And so that if there is a delinquency or default, the lender then has the funds on hand to make that payment. As you heard on the call, we recently have approved District of Columbia, their PACE program, and Maryland, Jessa, Maryland's went out last week. So hopefully that'll be trickling to you. As you heard Nick mention, we are working with Connecticut on their program as well. Again, our goal is to get the programs approved so we can start doing deals. And again, as the notice sets out, the state program has to be approved by HUD first. And that way, any deals that come in after that, we don't have to go on a one out, one off. We've already approved that state's program. So as the deals come in, we are able to review and hopefully approve individual deals. Another requirement of the notice, as that last bullet on that slide states, is a state attorney general opinion letter. It essentially says, what we want it to say is that the PACE financing is treated like taxes. And we have been able to get those letters in many jurisdictions. I can tell you the letter does not have to come from the Attorney General herself or himself. It just has to be on letterhead and come from somebody who has the authority to express that opinion for the Attorney General's office. We have run into situations where a jurisdiction says our Attorney General won't express any opinion on this. We'd probably need to talk about that. We might be able to figure out a workaround on that. Not sure what we would be able to do. It's somewhat exasperating that the Attorney General wouldn't express an opinion on a law of their state, but let's work with you. Colin, I'm going to pause there. I think I saw a chat question come up. Let me see if anything. If the tax, this is from Abigail, if the taxes are collected by the capital provider, would this limit eligibility with HUD? That does not meet our requirement, but Abigail, let's talk about that. Again, that might be something we would be able to work with. That is actually a situation on a state in the Midwest where we're working with them now. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but you know, let's talk. Let's see if we can work that out. Again, we might be able to figure out a workaround around that. So I won't say that's an absolute bar, but our requirement is that the taxes get collected like normal taxes. Bracken says, for states with multiple programs, does HUD require separate approvals by city or region? So we do require it for each locality, Bracken, so that is correct. So we're actually working, and I'll tell folks now, with the state of Illinois. They're trying to do one blanket approval, and we're working with them because we think that's a good idea, and that that approval, once we get there, we haven't gotten there yet, will cover all of the state. So once we can get through that, we would basically have approved the entire state. But if we can't get there, as Bracken points out, we would have to work on each individual locality. Take us a bit longer, but that's what we would do. Can you provide copies of AG letters that were acceptable? We have done that, yes. I'm not going to provide it to everybody on this call, but when we work with folks or work through that, we can give you a sample, if you will, of an AG letter. Let's go to the next slide, but keep those questions and comments coming. And Colin, you'll watch the time so that we're, yep. Okay. So talking about some of the requirements that are in the notice. This is not everything in the notice. Remember, the federal government, it's a long notice. There's a lot in there, but these are some of the things that I just wanted to highlight for you all. We will provide how many states we've given approval for, but unfortunately, it's a small number at this point. But as you can tell, we're approving them a couple last week, and we've done some in the past, and we're continuing to work with states going forward. The owner has to be in compliance with all of HUD's business agreements and requirements. Again, that's one we can work with, but if we have a non-compliant owner, then as much as it's a great deal, we don't want to have funding, and frankly, you don't either, to an owner, an individual who can't follow the rules, and we wonder where the money goes. We do require an energy audit. The notice describes the type of audit, but we are willing to work with providers and owners on the type of audit and what exactly they have. May have an existing audit that we can work with. Savings to investment ratio of 1-to-1, that is a requirement. We think that should be able to be met. And I'll differentiate that from that the underwriting is based on 75% of estimated savings. We've done programs in the past based on energy savings. We found anything that bases it on 100% typically isn't accurate because properties just don't meet that when they actually have the energy efficiency improvements in place. So for underwriting purposes, 75% of estimated savings, differentiate that from savings to investment ratio of 1-to-1. Those are two separate items, and they're more fully discussed in the notice. It's important to note that in all of our FHA insurance programs, we have debt ratios, and they're discussed a little more in the notice, and debt to value ratios, and those still apply. So if the property is coming in with an existing FHA insured mortgage and with a new FHA insured mortgage, this is not a way to add more HUD debt to the property and more debt to the property, so that we do look to the debt ratios. They go anywhere from 83% to 95% of value. Ours are very generous in the multifamily lending world. The energy measures must be permanently affixed. So it's come up, many programs have resiliency requirements and other requirements. And so how those get fit into the audit and the financing, that I don't have a good answer for you on, and perhaps we might not be able to get there. But I will say, let's talk about that. Maybe we can work with folks on those as well. And this also applies that the PACE repayment cannot exceed the remaining useful life of the fixtures. We are willing to work on water saving measures as well. Next slide. So the notice does talk about the HUD review. It has a very specific list of the HUD submission requirements. And if there is an FHA insured lender, there is a requirement for the lender to review that. So keep that in mind. That is a process that has to happen before it comes to HUD. It could happen at the same time, but HUD's not going to approve the PACE financing until the lender has completed their review and has given us the things we have asked for in the notice. Again, as I mentioned, the notice has very specific submission requirements, and it talks about time frame. Paul Williams, who's from our California office, who I think is not going to be able to join us today, in a prior workshop, talked about the importance of getting us our submissions on a timely basis, giving us a complete package up front rather than piecemeal. That helps everyone. I think most folks appreciate that. And time frame, we typically say, and again, remember there's a couple stages of this. We have to approve the program, the locality program first. After we do that, then we can get an actual submission from a borrower or HUD owner, and then we'll work through that. But we typically say, give us 30 days. Could work out in less than that if we get a complete package. If there's some back and forth, we need something augmented, could take a little longer. But generally we say we can get through our process in 30 days. Now, the experience from folks on this call from working through the jurisdiction approval was it took much longer than 30 days, and it clearly did. But the two deals that I'm familiar with, we had to go with workarounds, if you will, because not all of those criteria that were in the slide, specifically the one about lender notification, was part of those programs. So again, if something's not there, that's going to require us to work a little harder, work with our attorneys, come up with a workaround if we can get there. And so that's going to just take a longer period of time. I'm going to check the chat. Oh, it looks like chat's clear, I think. Oh, no, Jess has got one. Did we see the Thank you. Oh, I don't want to read Jess's all. I'm going to try and skim it. So Jess is pointing out that she believes that most state PACE laws don't require lender notification. And we are finding that as well. You know, our concern is that our FHA insured lender or HUD needs an opportunity to cure, and we don't want to run the risk of losing our interest in the property, if you will, or the property having a risk to it by the owner being in default. So we have worked out a workaround. So Jess is right. And so we think the workaround will work. It's the lender holding funds in an account. So again, we're continuing to work with folks, and we think we can get there. I'm going to ask for the next slide in the interest of time. So, so here's some things just want to point out to the group, and we've talked about working with post-administrator localities on the requirements. I think we've shown that even though every requirement's not met, every T's not dotted, or T's not crossed, I not dotted, if you will, that we're able to work with localities, and we are willing to do that. That's not a promise that we can work every deal out, but we're willing to see what we can do. One important aspect, and Jess is familiar with this in terms of Baltimore City, a lot of jurisdictions now are allowing for retroactive PACE financing, where in essence, the energy efficiency work has been completed, it's been paid for, and then PACE financing is added at a later point. After a lot of review, HUD's come to the determination that we can't get comfortable for that, so HUD would not consider retroactive PACE financing. The reason for that is it was a stretch to get our leadership and our attorneys on board for PACE. And part of our argument about why PACE made a lot of sense for the HUD world is that by allowing for PACE financing, we are allowing for energy improvements that will increase the cash flow of the property. So it'll make it easier to meet debt service and pay all the bills of their property. And by allowing the energy efficiency improvements, we are also allowing for these improvements that will increase the value of the property. So if you ever have to foreclose on the property or take ownership, we've got a more valuable property. So cash flow and ownership. Well, the retroactive PACE financing, neither of those are in place because they already existed before the PACE financing came into place. So after a lot of back and forth with our leadership on whether we consider retroactive financing, we have come to the place that we will not consider retroactive PACE financing. I know not all jurisdictions have that anyway, so for many of you on this call, it's not a consideration. But I know many jurisdictions do, and just want you to know, that's one we're not going to talk about because we did a lot of talking about that this past summer. It reached the highest levels of HUD, and that was the determination. I mentioned before value and debt service coverage ratios, so those are important to us. We have some programmatic requirements as total loan to value ratio and debt service coverage, and those are again programmatic, and we can't waive those, and we're typically going to look at those very closely. So the projections that the PACE financer uses will be looking at very closely. The value set, cap rates, again, this is what we do. We underwrite loans, so we know what cap rates are, and we know how where they come from and what they should be on particular localities and properties, and debt service coverage as well. So we'll look at that closely. We have yet to approve PACE financing on a new construction property, although we're willing to do so. We actually have about 3 deals right now that are in concept stages where we're working with the FHA lender on those. I'll keep Colin up to date, and hopefully we'll know by the next workshop, but we think we might be able to get there on those. The notice, as you'll read, was more written for existing properties, and I heard a lot of folks talk about the benefits of PACE for existing properties to improve cash flow and bring energy efficiency to existing properties, and that's what we thought we were going to see. And again, 5 years ago when we were writing this, I think that's what the world was more so in terms of PACE. Now we're seeing with new construction, we haven't approved any of those yet, but we're discussing that with several lenders. Again, 3 deals right now, and we might be able to get there. Again, I'll keep Colin updated, and if anybody wants to follow up, we can keep you updated as well. No secrets. If we can make it work, we're willing to make it work. But I go back to that second bullet and the last bullet. It can't change our underlying underwritten value and debt service coverage ratios, and it doesn't change borrower equity requirements. Borrowers are looking for, oh, I can use PACE and I can substitute for equity with my HUD loan. No, that's not the case. You borrowers still need to come up with the equity requirements. And frankly, 83 to 95% loan to value ratio, yeah, find that out, find that someplace else. So we have pretty good loan terms anyway, 40-year fixed rate financing. So we can't change and won't change any of our underlying requirements. I see another question, and we can go to the next slide, but I think that's the last one. So good, we've got questions. All right, checking. Are you using debt yield now in determining debt service coverage ratio? That is actually defined in the HUD world. So I'll defer to how that's defined in our MAP guide. I think that we talked about that a little more in the notice, 2017-01. So Abigail, if you don't have a good answer to that, just write me afterwards and I'll get you the link to our information. But in our FHA insured world, our MAP guide determines all of that. And our FHA lenders know that all too well because they're in the business of doing FHA. Any other questions, folks? Please, I see we got 5 minutes left. Colin, do you have anything we wanted to cover?
That was masterful, Bob. Thank you. You moved through a lot of material quickly.
I was keeping my one eye on the clock, and then again, because Paul wasn't able to join, as you could tell, I synthesized his presentation from last time. Let's see, Victoria's got, you mentioned 40-year financing. If state has a 30-year limit, will that be the limit? No, there can be shorter term financing attached to a HUD loan, just can't be longer. So you can pair shorter term financing with an existing FHA insured loan, but that's a good question. Any other questions, comments from folks? And Colin, you had mentioned that you were also going to send around contact information.
I will. I'll share this deck with everyone and contact information. And then after we've completed the third workshop, which I think is just a week away or maybe 10 days away or something, we'll do a recap for the entire community. We've achieved some pretty big milestones. I say we, but really you, Bob, and your team, and Jessa and Bracken and some others in getting projects and programs approved. And we want to share that news with folks. Yeah. And to the extent, I guess one question I have, Bob, because you mentioned Illinois in kind of trying to think outside the box a little bit and work with you to see if they can get all of their municipalities and programs approved at once. Yep. If successful, I imagine that a lot of other states and programs would like to replicate that. So I guess the question is it appropriate for another state to try and start a similar process with you now, or should folks?
They can start now. I think we're close on Illinois. Actually was emailing last week with them, back and forth last week. My sense is by the end of this month, we'll have a really good idea if we could get there. And frankly, we would like to get there. You know, why do we, I forget, somebody said, was it Abigail, 20 some counties in the Commonwealth? Or so anyway, why would we want to do this 20 times when we could do it once? So yeah, I mean, we would like to get
212.
There. Pardon?
212.
Oh, 212. There you go. See, I'm from Maryland. It's 27 counties in Maryland, so we're rather small in comparison. But right. So why would we want to do that? You know, that many times? Because I can tell you, in California, we've been going jurisdiction by jurisdiction, and you know, again, too much brain damage for a lot of people. So yeah, if we can get there, and we're happy to tell folks, you know, we'll get there. If we can't with Illinois, that doesn't mean we can't get there with another one, because you know, it's herding cats, 212 jurisdictions. You know, every jurisdiction might have their own wrinkle, and so it's trying to pull all those wrinkles into one common approval that we can get our arms around, that the state of Illinois financing agency get their arms around, and then presumably we would receive the application through state of Illinois. You know, it might have originated with the locality, and then they would just tell us this meets all the terms we've agreed to, HUD, or that you've already approved. That's kind of our vision. But I'll keep folks approved. Again, I'm hopeful that we're going to get that by the end of the month. Let's see. Scott said those were all in California, and those were all there were 3 202s and an 811. So again, that made it easier. We were the financing. There was no lender in those. So so that's a key takeaway. For whatever reason, we just have not been getting FHA insured lenders and borrowers to bite. To be honest with you, other than one deal because of retroactive, that's the only one we've turned down. So we haven't even turned down many deals. We just haven't had our FHA owners and our FHA lenders show that level of interest.
Roger that. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments in
I think
the?
Abigail's got a question. She had her hand up.
Yeah, I'll be faster because we're short on time. So, having worked in commercial real estate, I'm aware, like in Freddie and Fannie and probably FHA as well, it definitely is the lenders that are working with HUD that we need to get on board. And so is there a way or any recommendations you have on the best way to do that instead of just one by one trying to?
So that's a great question. So all of our lenders are under the umbrella of the Mortgage Bankers Association.
Right,
So
yeah.
perhaps it's outreach the MBA.
Okay.
And then all of I mentioned the 5 regions. Our FHA lenders also have regional umbrella groups, if you will. In this region, it's the Eastern Lenders Association,
Okay.
ELA. So ELA is the umbrella group of all FHA lenders for Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. So perhaps it makes sense to reach out to those folks and see what they're willing to do on behalf of their members. Otherwise, it is lender by lender. But remember, they all still have to come to us deal by deal. So the
Yes.
lender's going to have to be on board on the individual deal. But I think you make a great point. If they know MBA or ELA is already on board, it'll make it a whole lot easier.
I mean, we've talked to Walker and Dunlop and, Berkadia, and there's, the big guys that do all three, and they conceptually are interested. They say, what does HUD say? So there's definitely a lot of kind of, he said,
So,
she said. Yeah.
So between this summer and this fall, I've talked to the FHA lead on Berkadia, Steve Irvin, and I've talked to Walker and Dunlap's FHA lead as well about PACE.
Okay, great.
So,
new information. Thank you.
So I've essentially, without an hour workshop, I've essentially had this basic conversation with them that, hey, our debt service coverage ratios and loan to value ratios still apply, guys, on new construction, but we're willing to do it and, talk to us and work with your borrowers, blah, 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 blah. But I've had these conversations with both of them, and they are 2 of our larger lenders. By the way, we have about 100 FHA approved lenders across the country. And there are a lot of the usual suspects. So again, Berkadia, Walker, Dunlap, folks that you've probably heard of and many of you have dealt with. You're welcome.
Just one thing to note, like that can be that sort of engagement, the sort of next iteration of this work. Once sort of the programs and everybody understands the HUD process, then thinking about how to engage other key stakeholders in this conversation, I think is an important next step. So we can talk.
Yeah, and we're happy to facilitate, if you will. We don't have to be part of the conversation. Not that we don't want to, but again, if it helps, we're happy to facilitate. But you're talking, Berkadia, Walker, Dunlap. Those are 2 of our bigger lenders, and certainly very active in this part of the country.
Awesome. Well, Bob, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, everybody. Hopefully everybody got something out of it from the comments. Sounds like, again, if there's follow-up questions, if you think of something later, happy to either respond to an email or jump on a phone call with folks and alleviate some of the cloud around the whole HUD world and how we're dealing with PACE.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Talk soon.
Thanks all. Stay safe.
Bye.